Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Hashim Kumar. In October, Czechs will elect a new parliament in a vote that could reshape Europe's security and political landscape. Former Prime Minister Andrej Babiš is leading in the polls, but coalition arithmetic could force him into partnership with far-right and far-left parties, raising fears of Prague drifting towards an illiberal bloc alongside Hungary and Slovakia. Russian interference, disinformation and even violence on the campaign trail have further inflamed tensions. Tonight we're joined by Mikulaś Peksa, he's a former MEP, to explore the stakes for Czechia and Europe. Mr. Peksa, welcome back to TVP World. Thank you for taking the time.
Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Good evening, sir. Pleasure as always. So, what is making Andrej Babiš so popular? Why is he leading?
I guess to a high degree, these are the populistic policies he is promoting, could be compared to some politicians from other countries in the Central and Eastern Europe, like Viktor Orbán or Jaroslav Kaczynski, maybe. But the other part of the story are the real failures of the current government. I mean, the social situation over the last few years has deteriorated rapidly. The salaries, the pensions and other have been decreasing. So the failure of the current government is strongly fueling Babiš as the, let's say, most or the biggest challenger in the current situation.
So it sounds as though Babiš is promising to, raise pensions, raise wages? How's he going to afford that?
Well, that's probably something you will hardly find an answer in the electoral program of his movement. Simply, they do not tackle this question and rather focus on the promises of solutions that might be hardly possible to be delivered. On the other hand, I think some parts of his program are realistically possible to be achieved. The current government effectively increased the pension retirement age, especially for the younger voters, and Babiš simply proposed to return it to the original value of 65 years. I think this can be delivered and gives him the opportunity to get the voters who have previously voted for the government on his side.
So what's the demographic of the voters for him?
Well, the Czech situation is hard to be explained for the followers from the outside, because the main ruling party is actually closest ally to Polish PiS, whereas the biggest opposition party is the closest ally to Hungarian Fidesz. So, I mean, this discussion may sound a little bit ridiculous or surprising, but that's the reality we are currently live. We are seeing two conservative blocs effectively opposing each other, whereas the liberal or, let's say, social liberal voters, they hardly find any real representation.
Okay, well, as you say, quite an interesting layout there, politically speaking. Now, one of the things that Babiš has promised is to stop supplying ammunition to Ukraine. Is that a popular policy?
Well, I'm afraid that it's the case, because unfortunately in the Czech context, the anti-Ukrainian propaganda that is now being spread across many countries in Eastern Europe, including Czechia, including Poland, has really made a huge difference, and the society sentiment against Ukraine and Ukrainians is quite strong. And Babiš is quite capitalizing in a similar way as other populists in surrounding countries do. So yes, that's the case. He is going against the support for the Ukrainian state. He is going against the support for for the people living currently in Czechia, and he's even openly talking about sort of like deportations in the style that we do see in the US under the President Trump administration.
Well, there are reports by Czech intelligence that there is a great deal of Russian influence in the way of disinformation, for example, in Czechia. How much of that is responsible for the shifting attitude towards Ukraine and Ukrainians?
I'm afraid to the high degree, because what should be admitted that the current government made almost no steps to tackle this Russian propaganda. I mean, shall we be talking about real substantial examples? The Digital Services Act that was introduced across the European Union is still not yet implemented in Czechia, which has a detrimental effect on our ability to counter the existing disinformation that are spreading across Czech media landscape. So my recommendation in this case would be don't leave this problem unsolved, because it may cost you victory in the elections, as we will most likely see for the current Czech government.
Right. Well, it's certainly a common tactic used throughout the region by Russia, and it seems to be having some effect in some countries. Now, tell me about Mr. Babis's ANO party. Will he get enough support, assuming he wins, but based on the polling at the moment, will he get enough support to run a government on his own, or will he have to form a coalition? And if so, with whom?
Well, I think the current polls and the overall fragmentation of Czech political landscape do not predict that Babiš would be sole winner of the elections. He will need coalition partners. Unfortunately, there are some, let's say, minor far-right parties who are close to his views and or even more extreme, who would gladly support him and who would gladly secure him the majority in the parliament, most probably even the majority needed to change the constitution. This is the situation as it is. Maybe I would just make a short disclaimer to your initial introduction. I guess the ones who are you reporting as the far left are no longer considered far left. They are rather getting quite close to the far right positions.
Right. So it sounds like there's going to be quite a shaky coalition there. Do we expect Babiš to be able to get anything done?
That's really a good question, what he could do, because from his position as a populist leader who may pursue nationalist policies, he would certainly have a huge majority for doing that. On the other hand, Babiš himself, he is one of the richest businessmen in the country, and he owns massive industry focused on production of fertilizers or agriculture. I think shall Czechia take some anti-EU stance, it might easily result into quite a decline of Babiš's company or its economical result. So therefore, I would actually expect the outcome of his government to be way less lethal or fatal compared to what we might expect based just on the political assessment.
So are we expecting him to move Czechia more close to the European Union ethos philosophy, or are we expecting him to move closer to places like Hungary and Viktor Orban's philosophy?
I think the closest ally independently of Brussels for Andrej Babiš is Robert Fico in Slovakia. And within Brussels, they are cooperating directly with Viktor Orban within the so-called Patriots for Europe. So I guess that's very much the bloc that Czechia would participate in. I mean, expect sort of a restoration of Austro-Hungarian Empire, if you want so.
Right. So just to be clear, moving closer to Slovakia is more likely than moving close to Hungary. Is that what you're saying?
I would actually judge the situation the way that these two regimes are closely allied to each other, and Babiš just wants to to make the bilateral alliance trilateral.
Okay, so he's trying to play all sides. That's going to be a little bit difficult for the European Union when it comes to unified decision-making, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the forming of the majority within the Council of the European Union would be quite difficult, and Babiš is openly stating that he will block a lot of decisions, especially in the field of support of Ukraine, the climate policies, but also generally the support for the rule of law is now being threatened because simply these people who are already businessmen with huge political influence, they don't want to be controlled by democratic institutions.
What's the attitude of the Czech electorate towards the European Union? Because one does hear occasional reports of, the Czech Republic actually leaving the EU. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I may say that if you compare the Eurostat data, you would probably realize that Czechs are among all the countries in Europe one of the most skeptical towards the membership to the EU. On the other hand, what should be said, let's say some 80 or 90% of Czech export, and the country is strongly focused on export, is directed towards Germany. So any disruption in the cooperation within Czechia and the rest of the EU would most likely cause major disruption in the Czech economy. So in that sense, I'm not really that much afraid of some like Czechs or something like that, because it would simply result in the collapse of our industry.
Right. Well, we shall, of course, be watching the elections very closely in early October and hope you'll come back and share your analysis with us after that time. Mr. Peksa, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye now. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, though. Lots more coming up. Goodbye.